In my last Warhammer 101 video, I showed you guys how to paint your very first Ultramarine, and the response from that video was really good, so a massive thank you to everyone. I really appreciate the support. But the Ultramarines are not for everyone, and the good news is that the Space Marines have a ton of chapters to choose from. So in this week's Warhammer 101, I'm going to show you guys how to paint one of the most popular chapters out there, the Blood Angels. Stay tuned. The Blood Angels have a few colours in their army. Dante has his armour in gold, the Deck Company is in black armour, and some guys have parts of their armour yellow. But for today's video, I'm going to be going with the army's main colour of red. I've used red plenty of times before, especially on cloaks, but I think this is the first time I've used it as a main colour of a model. After I primed the model with a spray of Halford's Grey Primer, I start painting a thinned down layer of Mephiston Red all over the armour. This is the easiest part of painting because at this stage you can be messy, but make sure to spread it out as evenly as possible around the armour. With two solid base coats down, I move on to the black parts, which is the under armour, part of the gun and the wings on the chest. For the silver parts like the rest of the gun, the chainsword, the backpack vents and part of the helmet, I go with the always reliable lead belcher. With the base colours on and dry, next up is the recessed shading of the armour. Now usually I would go with null and oil for this, but for this week I'm going to try something a little different and I'm going to go with a contrast paint, Flesh Tearers Red. I've used some contrast paints before as shades, but when I thought about it more, I think I've only really used them as just shades. For the next Space Marine video, I think I might switch that around a bit. But I did use null and oil to shade the black parts of the model, like the under armour, the chest wings and the pouches and the belt. While the shades were drying, I turned to the eyes. The Ultramarines' eyes were red, so this time I'm going to go with a green and carefully apply two thin layers of Warbrass green on the lenses. While I'm waiting for the shading parts to dry, I'm going to switch over to the base to try and get that sorted out. Now last week I used Astronite Granite. It's quick, it's easy to use and the results look great. But for this week I'm going to be doing the same type of thing, but I'm going to add a little bit of extra stuff into it. I start off by sticking some tin cork down. I got sheets of this stuff from an art shop, so I'm sure it's easily available everywhere. Once stuck on, I cut away the edges and rough them up a bit with my hobby knife. Then I add the Astronite Granite onto the edges that don't have cork on it, but I push it right in to fit in snugly. After spraying it with the grey primer, I give it a base colour of Dawnstone, followed by a generous shading of Agrax Earthshade. And then to finish it off, I went with a dry brush of Dawnstone again to make the edges pop. At this point, the Blood Angel is looking pretty good, but we can take it up a level by adding some simple highlights to make the edges pop. It's time to start highlighting the armour with Evil Sunz Scarlet. I thinned the paint down and as steadily as I could I painted along the edges of the armour, the helmet and the edges of the backpack. For the silver parts like the gun, the chainsword and the vents, I went with Stormhold Silver along their edges. When doing this part, I realised that I hadn't painted the symbol on his left forearm and a part of his chest, so I based that with Retributor Armour, shaded it with Reikland Flesh Shade and highlighted it back up with Stormhold Silver. For the belt and the pouches, I highlighted them back up with Eshin Grey. To give the eyes a little extra effect, I add two layers of Tesseract Glow to make them stick out a little bit. The model is almost finished, all that's left is the purity seal on his backpack, and these are very easy to do. I paint Corax white on the seal and the parchment, and as carefully as I can, I paint small little lines along the parchment. Keep your hand as steady as you can, and have some thinned down Abaddon Black only on the tip of your brush. For the seal, I went back to Flesh Tearers Red and actually use it as a contrast paint. To finish it off, I go over the parchment with Skeleton Horde for that old paper look. And with that, my first Blood Angel is done. Following the same basic technique of basing, shading and highlighting, you too can have your very first Blood Angel ready for battlefield in no time. If you've noticed that there's no decals on the model, don't worry, I didn't forget. I'm going to make a separate video on decals when I get the first 5 Space Marines of this series finished. The next Warhammer 101 video will be something that I rarely ever try painting because it can be quite tricky to work with, and that is yellow. But I'm going to go full contrast yellow for the Imperial Fists. And remember, if I can paint it, so can you. Thanks for watching.